Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more.
Welcome to Compass Points, a podcast about Knoxville and Knox County government, politics, business, education, and just about anything else that grabs our attention. I'm Scott Barker. I'm the editor of Compass, and Compass is a subscription-based website and newsletter where we report on all those topics and more, and you can find us at CompassKnox.com. I am joined by Compass co-founder, publisher, Jesse Mayshark. Jesse, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm better than I was last week. Our loyal listeners might remember that I had to dial in remotely last week because I was recovering from some seasonal crud, and I would say I'm still recovering, but I'm more recovered than I was then. So I'm happy to be here in person.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we kind of both had the crud. Your crud was cruddier than mine.
Yeah,
by far.
mine went deep.
Yeah,
it's been rough out there this spring, man.
I know it. Yeah, these allergies are just
brutal.
It's bad. You kind of.
Well, and part of what, and I don't want to step on, I'm not talking about the weather, Seth. I'm talking sort of broader climate trends here. Part of it, I realized this week, there was a report that came out from the National Weather Service. This has been the driest first quarter of a year in East Tennessee since, I think, 2007, which if people remember 2007, that was a very dry year. That was like practically drought conditions that year. And that, of course, makes allergies worse because we don't get those nice cleansing rains coming down, clearing out the air and washing it all down the drain.
Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah,
it sure does. And speaking of Seth, Lord Seth Barber is our producer. He is on his throne here in the opulent studios of Barbarian Productions. Seth, how are you doing today?
I do have the most comfortable chair in the room, I'm sure. Not that you guys don't have comfortable chairs. I do provide nice chairs for these guys. Relax, everybody. But I do have the best chair in the room, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm well. The weather is accurately seasonally correct, and if not a little bit dry. Because I've been the dryness is on the skin and stuff like that. My dry skin this year has been worse than normal, and we had that one gusher last Sunday that kind of rinsed it off, and it's all back on and thicker than it was before that happened. So, but nice cool mornings. Get out get out the door in a light coat, and by lunchtime you shed the coat and you're comfortable for the rest of the day. These are my kind of days. I like them, minus the crud, if you will. So we'll move on with that.
All right. Well, we had quite a bit happen last week. One thing we'll talk about is the possibility that Knoxville Mayor India Kincannon and several city council members might get an extra year in office, courtesy of the state legislature. We'll talk about a bill that is under consideration over in Nashville. WUOT, the public radio station at the University of Tennessee, had a leadership change. We'll talk about that a little bit. I have a couple of real estate / development topics today. The Dominion Group has kind of presented their plans for townhouses for the St. Mary's property in North Knoxville, and they also included a little bit more in their presentation to the Knox County Planning Commission. Downtown, the Riverview Tower, the second tallest building in the center city, was sold. We'll talk a little bit about who bought it and how much they paid. But we're going to start out talking about the upcoming election. First, we'll be talking about the District 7 Commission race. We had profiles of the candidates last week on it. And we'll start, but the lead off is the mayor's race. We had our profile of the mayoral candidates, the Republican mayoral candidates, and they also got together for a discussion about business topics at the Innovate 6.5 candidate forum. So, first of all, if you haven't been paying attention, we have three candidates in the Republican primary and one in the Democratic primary. His name is Bo Hawk. He's going to go on to the general election. We haven't profiled him yet because he's unopposed, and so but we did take a look at Betsy Henderson, who is a school board member, Kim Frazier, who is a county commissioner, and Larson Jay, who is also a county commissioner. They are the three Republicans running, and they offer some contrasts. You could say the Larson Jay is positioning himself as a CEO. He keeps saying that he is applying to be the county's CEO, and also that he will run the county like a business. And if he's in, Frazier is more of a she's kind of portraying herself as somebody who has been both an advocate for the people in the general public to the county government and a member of county government. So she has a broad perspective on how to run the county government. Betsy Henderson is positioning herself as the most conservative of the Republicans, and is the only one who's just come out and said, "I will not raise taxes." And so it was it's an interesting group. Jay has been county commissioner for 2 terms. He said the other day that he had started 6, I believe, businesses, and so he is, like I said, he's looking at this as a business matter. Kim Frazier served 1 term in on the county commission. Prior to that, she was a co-founder of the what is now known as the Knox Community Planning Alliance. It was the Knox County Planning Alliance, and it is a collection of groups, including Hardin Valley, a Hardin Valley group that she founded prior to that, and they advocate for responsible planning, and that, of course, timing's great for that, because planning and growth those are topics that are at the forefront of this race. And so Jesse, what stands out to you from these candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've described it well. They each have what I would call sort of somewhat different centers of political gravity in terms of where their obvious base support is. Jay is very much he's a pro-business guy. He is, I think you would say, a pro-growth guy. I'm sure he would say he also supports smart growth, not just unruly growth everywhere. But if you look at who's supporting him, most of the developers in town who have contributed to one of these candidates, they are supporting Jay. Jay is the one who, he kind of is the closest to your classic sort of Chamber of Commerce Republican. He's not real worked up about cultural issues. I think he tends to view those when they come before commission as kind of distractions and not really things that commission needs to, or county government needs to be focusing on. So he's kind of a guy who wants to see more growth, thinks that the future of the county is in being business friendly and in welcoming, continuing to welcome new residents as they move in. He has been supportive of the whole Advanced Knox planning process very much. Frazier obviously comes more from the kind of the community advocacy world. As you mentioned, she started a planning advocacy group in Hardin Valley that then joined with other groups and formed this countywide group, which has been, fairly successful in weighing in, including in the Advanced Knox planning process. She also is not super active or engaged, I would say, by the kind of culture war issues. I think she very much sees her role as speaking for the people who live here. She wants to protect the quality of life of people who already live here and make sure that, future growth as it happens does not overwhelm our existing infrastructure any more than it already has, which in some places, including Hardin Valley, is very much the case. And then Henderson very much she is the cultural conservative in the race on the school board. She's been a leading voice both in favor of school vouchers and providing public money to private schools, including religious schools. She's one of the leading voices on the school board in raising concerns about books in the school libraries and those kinds of things. And so that's kind of her, each of those, I think, fits comfortably within the broad umbrella of the county's Republican electorate, but they're kind of in different corners of it. And there's some overlap, like Henderson also shares concerns about growth in the same way that Fraser does. So there's some overlap between the two of them. At the same time, I think Fraser and Jay overlap to some degree in thinking that the county really needs to find ways to invest more in its infrastructure, where, Henderson says that she wants to invest in infrastructure too, but by kind of making this very public show that she did this week of signing a no new taxes pledge, she's very much fencing herself in because she would be operating within the existing revenues of the county, which, as we know, are already stretched and strained. But at the same time, that no new taxes pledge that helped get Glenn Jacobs elected to 2 terms as county mayor. It helped get Tim Burchett elected to 2 terms as county mayor. So she's kind of following the playbook of the people who've come before her.
Oh yeah, and that whole, you're not going to lose very many votes by saying I'm not going to raise taxes. Period. You might lose some votes if you say I will raise taxes, but you won't lose any if you say you won't.
Right.
Regardless of the economic situation.
Yeah, and Jay and Fraser are very much not saying, they both said, well, we hope, we don't think there would need to be a tax increase. But at the same time, they're also talking about the county, I think the way they tend to phrase it is we need to have an honest discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the things that not only Jay and Fraser, but other county commissioners are saying, is, they know that Jacobs is not going to propose a property tax increase in his last year in office, his last budget he's putting together. So they are also looking ahead, though, and Chris Caldwell, the chief financial officer for the county, has suggested this to them in the summer when after the budget's already passed and the reappraisal is done. There's a reappraisal going on now, and at the end of a reappraisal, you have to reset the tax rate because by state law you can't increase your revenues by the lower tax rate.
Just because property values goes up doesn't mean that you get to keep all that money.
So there's going to have to be a new certified tax rate, and they're saying we're going to have to talk then about doing something, and have it. That's when they're going to have the hard discussion. People always say, well, we're going to have some hard discussions about this. They never do, but it seems like. But that's going to be coming up then. One of the things was interesting.
Real quick, I apologize to interrupt you, but on the timing of this, for the political purposes of it, when's the reappraisal due?
Over the summer.
It gets done over the summer usually by August.
Okay, so by the time the reappraisal comes in and the real conversation starts happening about not certifying the lower rate and bringing the rate up as the kind of end around on raising taxes without raising taxes idea, that'll be after the election but before they take their seat?
Well, it depends. They
Yeah.
could do it in August or September. It probably just depends on the timing of when they get that from the the property assessor's office.
Yeah, the property assessor's office and the State Board of Equalization are the ones that set that rate. Yeah, there's some talk about, okay, because the rate will be lower,
Right.
because property values have gone up. In fact, the preliminary, I won't say estimate, that's too firm of a term, but the projection maybe is that the rate could end up being cut in half.
Right.
Right, down to like 70 some
77
cents.
cents was the figure that
Yeah.
has been bandied about. And there's been some talk about, okay, all we got to do is just then reset the rate to what it is now. And basically what they would be able to do is they could try to pass that off as saying, well, the rate's the same, so we didn't cut taxes.
Right. It would be a tax
But it would-
increase that kept the actual rate the same,
Yes.
but it would generate a lot more revenue than if they go ahead and adjust it all the way down and just leave it there.
Yeah.
But to your question, Seth, yeah, I mean, that will come after the election, and it would come either just before or just after the next mayor takes office.
Gotcha.
But it's an action of county commission. It's not one that the mayor actually has a vote in.
Gotcha. Like I said, I was just like the timing of it kind of sounded interesting to me, just because it might be one of those. It might happen right before said person takes office, and then they can keep their pledge of not having to, because that extra revenue, if it goes that route.
The key there, though, is
Depending on who.
it would probably happen after the actual election.
Yeah.
So that
It'd be between election day and
if they did decide to vote to increase the property tax rate, they would have to pay for it right then. Those who are running
right.
would have to pay.
Right.
And it would have budgetary implications. I mean, it would be complicated. There would be a lot of moving parts to it.
Yes, sure would be. But
And we will probably talk about it in great detail
we'll talk
later
about
in the
it.
year.
Yes, we will. Now, one thing that was kind of interesting is this mayoral forum at Innovate 65 hosted. It was at 121 Tech Hub in the old city. Very small venue, kind of an intimate venue, but unlike many of the forums that we cover, they had the entrepreneurs ask the questions of the candidates, and it was mostly about what would you do to, what's the state of the entrepreneurial landscape in Knox County, in your opinion? What will you do to support the startup communities, and startups? So the one question that was asked where they did touch on some of these things was the Bailey Foster, who founded Real Good Kitchen, asked, what's the decision that's that county government's kicked down the road? Well, what has the county been avoiding? And as you might think, Fraser said aligning growth with infrastructure. That was her thing, and that fit right in with her. This now Bo Hawk was there. He said, very, very similar. How do you manage the growth? And Henderson said Henderson started kind of. She also talked about growth, because that's what she's hearing when she's going out and about. But and she also said, talked about setting priorities. One of her catchphrases is, if everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. So, but Jay was the one who gave the most interesting answer, because he said it was the county's financial shape. was the big thing that the county's ignored. He said that previous politicians, he didn't quite come out and say mayors, but that's what he meant. Said we're not going to raise. They all pledged not to raise taxes as a kind of a. He didn't say Henderson's name either, but he was sitting right beside her and said that they've promised not to raise taxes, but they've been running up your credit card bill, and we've talked about this several times in recent episodes. The county's debt service is ballooning because of decisions made in the past on how on the terms of
when
the debt.
to pay for things,
and so he said that again, it's a business setting. He wants to be a CEO. He said that he's never. You don't run a business by not investing in your goods and services and everything else. And sometimes you have to raise prices.
Yeah,
and that's the closest he's come to saying that he would consider a property tax increase.
Right, and Henderson, somewhat in response to that, maybe made a point of saying she thinks Jacobs and previous mayors have done a great job.
Yes,
and
she
she's
did.
going to continue the job that they've done. So
right, and anyway, I'm sure that that as things go forward, whenever they're in these situations where they have to debate like that, those will be the three real big issues are going to be, how are you going to handle the financial crunch, and everyone agrees that the county's in a financial crunch, if not a crisis, but a crunch. And how will you handle growth and development? Of course, a lot of that's going to be handled through the application of the Unified Development Ordinance that's being drafted now and should be adopted by the time the next mayor takes office as part of that advanced Knox process that we've talked about.
Well, and Henderson's in an interesting position there as far as growth goes, because she also, like a lot of candidates who work with the conservative consultant Eric Wyatter, she's raising a lot of concerns about growth that, maybe we've had too much. She is not in favor of, more density in a lot of parts of the county. And the traditional way that, like the way that Glenn Jacobs and Tim Burchett before him have talked about, we don't need to raise taxes because we get so much growth and we get, quote unquote, natural revenue growth from new development, which in fact, for the most part, that new development doesn't actually cover the cost of the services you have to provide to it. But that's been kind of the line. But Henderson's is also not really promising that. I mean, Jacobs is very pro-developer and pro-growth. Henderson is kind of positioning herself as both anti-taxes and also to some degree anti-growth, at least at the kind of scale and density that produces, big jumps in property taxes, which, you're really kind of putting yourself in a box. If you don't want either taxes or growth, then it's hard to see where you're going to get new revenue from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, one thing, and this has nothing to do with policy or anything, it has more to do with the campaign itself. And that's the fundraising that the candidates have done. And, of course, that's going to be more important as the election day nears. Now they are supposed to file their disclosures. I believe today or Friday might be the deadline. At the beginning of the year, Jay had started in 2024 raising money, and he raised a significant amount of money. And in fact, he tied up all those contributions from all the developers and all that he talked about, and he spent a lot of it too. And at the beginning of the year, he had $333,000 on hand. I mean, that's plenty of money,
Yeah.
and he's been doing a lot of these ads are
Yeah, he's spending it because I see his ads all over the place.
all over the place. A lot on.
Very well produced. I mean, he is,
Yeah.
they are very professionally produced.
And they're
Political
well placed. I mean, like, I don't know what it actually costs, but I see him in the middle of Jeopardy on my evening Jeopardy
he's on
watches
TV,
pretty regularly.
he's on Facebook,
And I'm sure the 7:30 time slot, that window is probably some of the more expensive ad space.
That's what you raise money for in a
Right.
campaign.
Oh, absolutely, and
And you can see the pile of flyers I have on the floor that I've collected. Probably about half of those are his. Of all the flyers I've already gotten this year, are his or PACs that are supporting him.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see more Fraser ads too. Henderson, I don't see as much, but what I see from Henderson is she's generating a lot of. She's on social media a lot. She's pushing out a lot of stuff herself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what those fundraising levels.
you see a lot of her
actually are.
signs.
Yeah, her signs are around for sure.
So, but she's only raised as of January 15th, when the last disclosures came out. She'd only raised about a quarter of what Jay had raised. Now, we don't know yet, as I said, how much they've raised since then. But and I'm sure that the push was greater on that she had and Fraser had. Fraser had raised $115,000 by the end of last year, but most of that came from a personal loan that she made to her campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So, she and her husband are not doing too badly. He's a physician, he's a doctor, and they live in Hardin Valley, which is not a cheap place to live in Knox County. So, she's basically self-financing, or at least early on was self-financing. We'll see.
Well, and by nature of the way she's positioned herself, she's kind of foreclosed a lot of the big dollar donors who Jay has drawn on. Like developers, for the most part, are not going to be donating money to Fraser's campaign. One other thing I just wanted to mention about the Innovate 65 forum, and I think this maybe, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think this particular question didn't come up. It's just interesting to me in talking about county support for entrepreneurship. As far as I know, the county does not directly contribute any funds to like the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. The city does, but the county never has. The city has been much more active in things like the Maker City program, which is through the Entrepreneur Center. Like when you think about, and the city, of course, has been under more or less Democratic leadership, even though it's nonpartisan. The county's under Republican leadership, and there's this kind of stereotype that Republicans are more pro-business. The city has actually invested much more in supporting the entrepreneurial infrastructure of Knoxville than the county has, and it would be interesting to see if any of these candidates actually decide to chip in a little bit to that effort. Although, of course, as we're saying, it's hard for the county to chip in anything to anybody right now.
It sure is.
But I think I think one of the things that I find interesting when you're talking about this part of the conversation, particularly, it's like how many, like we talked about it in sales tax revenue, like 80-something% of the sales tax revenue that comes into Knox County goes into the city's coffers because of the way it's broken up.
But most
then
of that goes to
gets
the
back to the
schools
schools.
anyway.
But as far as like how many businesses are truly county businesses, how many innovators are starting a business in a non-city of Knoxville or non-township of Farragut location in the county, I'm guessing that's a pretty low number.
Well, but if you want to talk about supporting entrepreneurship, I mean, every place in Knox County is in Knox County.
True.
Whether you're starting a business in Knoxville or Farragut or whatever, you're in Knox County. And so if the county leadership is interested in supporting entrepreneurship,
Right,
it's
absolutely.
not that they only want to support people who are starting something in a garage in Powell. It's that you got to think about it sort of. Anyway, I have just always thought that was that particular thing is interesting, that the city actually has been much more visible and vocal in funding entrepreneurship in Knoxville than the county has been.
And of course, a lot of that is the county's leadership is Republican. Henderson said, best thing we can do is get out of the way. That's her thing. Jay was a little bit more supportive of or seemed to be more interested in lending some sort of county support for the entrepreneurial community. Fraser is smitten with public-private partnerships, and they all kind of are in a way, but it's kind of a way to reduce what you have to put in, I guess. And and another thing that they I wouldn't say completely in agreement on, but is a theme that popped up is that in Knoxville, in Knox County, the business community tends to be risk averse, and they don't want to risk failure because, Jay put it one way that if you fail, nobody will, everybody will dismiss you, and you don't get to try again. Well, he sees that as changing somewhat, and but that's one of the issues that they see, and of course that's something county government can't do anything about.
Well, and it's interesting that has been part of Knoxville's sort of business mindset for more than a century. This is something that the late great Dr. Bruce Wheeler wrote and talked a lot about in his histories of Knoxville. Was that he kind of saw it as from the Great Depression on, really, he saw this great retrench. There was a real dynamic business environment in Knoxville, sort of from the late 1800s through the early part of the 20th century. And then from the Great Depression on, there was just this kind of retrenching and almost like isolationism around Knoxville business leadership. And Wheeler was really kind of critical of that, thought that the city had developed exactly that personality you're talking about, of kind of thinking small and not wanting to take risks and so forth. So, of course, we do also have a great cheerleader for entrepreneurship heading up the University of Tennessee, and Randy Boyd, an entrepreneur himself, is he's been real active in promoting entrepreneurship through various courses and programs at the university. So there are voices out there. There are kind of forces out there. But it is interesting that that's sort of a persistent part of like the Knoxville commercial character in a way.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird how this is kind of in the air. It's not, how do you contract that? I don't know. And so anyway, we'll be following everything they have to say about that moving forward. Also, we did just hit on this briefly. Did have a profile on the 7th District Commission race, Republican primary again. Democrat is unopposed. It's kind of interesting because you got kind of two Republican insiders and a kind of a fifth generation North Knox Countyan running in the Republican primary. 7th District is Halls and Powell and High School and the land in between. And but you've got Buddy Burkhart, who's served 3 terms now in the past as the Knox County Republican chair. You got Barry Beeler, who is currently the Knox County Party's secretary, and they're running against Justin Mash, who is lives on a farm up right outside of Halls. One thing that was interesting, we had our correspondent Thomas Frazier did this. He had trouble getting a hold of Mash. Mash did not respond to his messages. I've since found out Mash changed his phone, and Thomas's messages went to spam. And so
this is a good thing for candidates to keep in mind. Make it easy.
Make it easy for
people to find you and get in touch with you.
Yeah, we went ahead and put together a shortened profile of him based on his website and some other media appearances he's made. But what's interesting is you've got Buddy Burkhart, who is more of the from the kind of traditional wing of the Republican Party. He's already, he only started raising money right at the beginning of the year, but two of his donors, one was Jason Zachary, is a state representative, and another was Scott Davis, who's a developer, former county commissioner, and Beeler is relying on the network that Eric Wider, the far right conservative consultant who works on numerous campaigns in Knoxville and Knox County, he's working for Beeler, and that network is where his donor base, and it'll be kind of interesting to see how that dynamic works out, because there's no love lost between Wider and his candidates and the traditional power brokers in the Republican Party. In fact, we talked about this was it last week, the
fight between Scott Davis and
Wider, who's donated to Burkhart, and Wider were basically Davis sent out a mailer mocking Wider and his candidates. But
and Burkhart, when he was county chair, was very much often at odds with Wider. Those guys don't like each other, and it's part of this sort of ongoing factional struggle within the county party, which in terms of the leadership of the party has kind of gone back and forth in terms of which faction has the chairmanship. At the moment, the county party is basically run by people who are closer to Wider. Burkhart also worked at the sheriff's office for a long time, so presumably he has some base of support there. I think the thing where Wider has been successful and where his candidates have been successful, including in the 7th District, like the incumbent 7th District Commissioner, Rhonda Lee, was a Wider candidate, and she won. The story that typically comes out is that Wider has his candidates work really hard. They get out there, they knock on doors, they show up places, and I don't know, is maybe Buddy Burkhart's doing that too. I feel like anybody running against a Wider candidate these days needs to be out there, kind of matching them door for door, and we will find out what the voters of the 7th District think.
Oh, absolutely, they will let us know, and we'll move on now to some of the development news that we had. Had the Riverview Tower downtown, built by C.H. Butcher right before his banking empire collapsed in the 1980s. It's the kind of an aqua blue glass. It's kind of a strange color of glass.
It's very 1980s.
It's very 1980s. Yes. Glass tower. It's 23 or 24 stories, depending on your source. The broker on this says 23. So that's the. But anyway, it's a tall building for Knoxville, and
second tallest
in downtown, and
second tallest in the city.
In the city, yeah. Isn't it the one over the UT building? Isn't it it's a little bit smaller, but not much.
That's the third tallest. Is that weird? The what I call the cereal box apartment building there near Tyson Park.
Yeah. Anyway, the Apex Bank, which is a Knoxville-based financial institution, bought the tower for a little bit more than $44 million. So it's all Class A office space. It's always been a bank building. Always been a bank building, and so it's had been owned by Hertz, the Hertz Investment Group, but It's got 334,000 square feet of Class A,
and it's mostly occupied with tenants.
Yeah, it's a lot of in a lot of the country, a lot of Class A office buildings emptied out, especially during, with in response to COVID. But Riverview has, their tenants are still there. So, but it will, obviously remain a bank, and their tenants will stay in place. And it's interesting to me one of the things that's interesting to me is, it and its companion building, the Plaza Tower, which CH's brother Jake built, right as his banking empire was collapsing. Those are literally the last two, if you want to call them skyscrapers.
Right.
First
and last skyscrapers in Knoxville.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting that nothing has been built since then. I mean, it's been more than 40 years ago, and no office tower like that has been built in Knoxville. So, which, a lot of people probably think it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just interesting to know.
It doesn't seem like that's a model that people are particularly pursuing anymore, the large office tower.
No.
Even in Manhattan, when they're building tall buildings now, they tend to be more residential than commercial.
Yeah, and that's one thing in Knoxville. That the model of having commercial for several floors and then residential on top of that. That's really not been a model here, which it is in a lot of larger cities. Of course, maybe that's because we're not that large of a city, but we're getting bigger. And as we talked about growth, and we are in the city of Knoxville is getting bigger. One of the things, areas where it's going to get bigger is in North Knoxville, at the old St. Mary's Hospital property, where the city has built its public safety complex. On the north end of the property, KCDC has teamed up with Dominion Group, a local developer, and they're going to be putting in residential units up there on the north end, along Churchwell Avenue, which is the very north end of the property. They're going to build 21 townhouses there, facing there's a big brick wall there right now. They're going to tear down that wall, put these 21 townhouses there. They'll be facing Churchwell, so they'll be facing the street. And they went to get approval for that from the Planning Commission last week, and it was there was no opposition. They didn't even, it was put on the consent agenda. They didn't even discuss it. They just passed it. So, but one of the interesting things is now the townhouse portion of this development was approved. There's a lot more to it, and in the documents that Dominion Group submitted to the Planning Commission, you got a glimpse of what they're going to be doing there. Of course, they're going to keep the historic hospital building, which dates back to 1930, and they're going to renovate it. They're going to probably turn it into senior housing of some sort.
Which raises the prospect that people who were born there when it was a hospital might be able to move into it.
Absolutely. They could, certainly could. I mean, just about whenever there's you get together, where there's a get together and people are talking about the St. Mary's site. They talk about St. Mary's. Always, inevitably, somebody's going to say, "How many people were born there?" And you'll get a smattering of people raising their hands. So, The other thing that is was interesting, though, is next to the hospital building, Dominion Group is going to build an even larger, square footage wise, apartment building there. I'm not sure if it's apartment or condominiums. It could go either way, I guess.
And that's kind of up on top of the hill.
Yeah, that's a little bit on. Yeah, that's on top of the hill, up from the condominiums. There'll be parking between the condominium the townhouses and the hospital building and this new building, which is going to have 109 units in it. It's going to have a courtyard. There's still going to be open space there, but that's going to be it's going to be about as tall as the hospital, but larger footprint than the hospital currently has.
If you lived on the top floor of either of those buildings, you would have some pretty nice views.
I would imagine you would. I've never been in the old part of the hospital that I can recall. At least
I don't even remember. I was in the hospital, but I don't remember.
I've been in
parts of
that hospital was a horrible maze.
It really was.
It was. I don't know where I was. I might have been in there. I don't know. But anyway, this is from a development standpoint, they're looking at this as you've got this new building they're going to build, and the historic hospital, which are high density multifamily buildings, and then you move down to the Churchwell Avenue border of the property, and you've got these townhouses, and then it's kind of a progression into the Oakwood Lincoln Park neighborhood, which is single family houses.
And as I have to say, as a resident of that neighborhood, and I've walked that block many times, right now that's just kind of like a blank space, as you say. On the north side of Churchwell is lined with single family homes, but that part that's the edge of the hospital property has just been a wall with kind of a vacant lot behind it. And so bringing in townhouse development there will really transform that block and turn it into a much more residential neighborhood block, just like the rest of Churchwell.
Yep. And I don't know. One of the things that they have talked about is the possibility of them getting a payment in lieu of tax agreement to help finance primarily help finance the renovation of the old hospital building, because that's going to be real expensive to do. And so there'll be just because they approved the townhouses doesn't mean that's the last you're going to hear about it until they build them. They've got all kinds of other things that they've got to get through as well. So moving on from there, WUOT, the University of Tennessee's public radio station, has had a big leadership change again, yet again. So Jesse, you've been following what's going on at WUOT. What happened at the top?
Yeah, so General Manager Jody Hamblett, who people may remember came to the station just about 3 years ago, she has departed, and there's some interesting angles to this. One of them is that there was no announcement of her departure. Now, like I said, she'd only been there for 3 years, but still, a lot of times when somebody leaves a position like that, the radio station or the university, somebody would put out a statement or something on social media saying, fond farewells to our leader. The official explanation from the university, like, this only became public because I heard about that this had perhaps happened, and I contacted the university and asked if she had in fact departed and what were the circumstances. And their response was that, yes, she has moved back to South Carolina, which is where she came from, to be closer to family. So that was the only explanation given. I did ask if there had been any disciplinary issues or and anything like that, and they said no. She just she left of her own accord, which there's no reason not to believe that. But it is still interesting that she left extremely quietly. I mean, that was a pretty high visibility role, and people may remember that there were some fraught moments in her leadership. She came in under as the station was going through several transitions. It moved from WUOT as it's a public radio station. It had been for a long time under the umbrella of the university's communications and public relations marketing the division that includes all the university PR people and everything. It got moved under the actual School of Communications and Information around the same time that Hamblet came in, and that was under new communications dean Joe Mazer, who had a vision to consolidate basically all of the university's various media outlets of various kinds. And he's brought all of those together now into what's called the Media Center, which includes WUOT. It includes the Daily Beacon, the student publication, student magazine Ablaze. There are a couple of university-based film and video production companies that are part of this too. The other thing that happened was that WUTK, the student-run radio station, which plays various forms of rock and pop and other kinds of music, which had been a sort of standalone, mostly self-supporting really entity, that was also brought under WUOT. And so when Hamblet came in, she was given control of both WUOT and suddenly WUTK. And that led to tensions with the former general manager of WUTK, Benny Smith, who departed in 2024, about a year after Hamblet got there. Under a lot of, there was a lot of tension. We wrote about this. You can find this in our archives if you're a subscriber, because we filed a records request that revealed a lot of, let's say, differences of opinion between Smith and Hamblet over how the station should be run. It was obvious that Hamblet didn't like Smith's approach. Smith was essentially forced out. I mean, he resigned. He wasn't fired, and he did get a severance package, but as part of the deal, he wasn't allowed to talk about it for like 6 months. And that created a real firestorm of negativity in the community, because Benny Smith is very well known and well liked and respected, both in the local music scene, because he's been involved and engaged in it for decades, and also the local broadcast community. There's a lot of broadcasters in Knoxville who came up under Benny at WUTK. And so there was a lot of unhappiness with how WUTK was handled, which led to lots of people saying mean things about Jody Hamblet on social media and other places. So, she stayed for 3 years. She did oversee this whole transition, and now she's gone. And there's no obvious evidence that she left under a particular cloud or anything. But at the same time, the announcement of her departure was certainly greeted on local social media by a lot of people happily. She had not built up a big fan base here. So WUOT is now going to, they have an interim, Greg Hill, who's a longtime employee there, is the interim general manager, and they're going to do a national search. And then they still have some other work to do. I mean, one thing, Hamblet had struggled the whole time she was there to hire a new news director for the station, and they have not been able to do that. That position is actually still open. So, whoever comes in there is going to have some work to do to kind of put all these pieces together and maybe rebuild some community goodwill that I think was lost under Hamblet's leadership.
Yeah, and the person who does come in will have some has a good staff to work with, because they're
I mean, that's the thing. There are still very good people there, including reporters Pierce Gentry and Jackie Sieber. They've got Heather Haley doing meteorology there now. So there's, there are certainly good things happening at the radio station. So it's not like it'll have to be a complete rebuild. But it'll be interesting what kind of person they bring in. Hamblett did not have, she had some background in public radio, but she was not, exactly a broadcast person. And be interesting to see who they get.
Yeah, well, speaking of leadership, the state legislature may tinker with how long Knoxville City's leadership is in place. There's a bill. It was delayed this past week. It's coming up again this week. Jesse, you've been looking at this. How could it extend Mayor India Kincannon second term in office?
Right. Well, so this is an interesting bill. The main thrust of the bill is to align city elections across the state with state and federal elections, which I think there's about 60 cities across the state that hold their city elections on off years, odd numbered years. Which Knoxville is one of them. We just had our most recent city council election last year, 2025. And so this is something that's been talked about in the legislature for a long time. There have been multiple bills introduced over the years to force cities to hold their elections on even numbered years. The rationale that's given is that it will increase turnout. And it is true. We talk about this all the time, that those city elections here, and I think this is true in a lot of other cities that have off-year elections, turnout is lower than it is in the general elections for state and federal offices, because what brings people out to vote? Presidential elections, gubernatorial elections, Senate elections, that's really what drives turnout. Everybody knows that. And so the argument is that this will have more people deciding their leadership, and that's a net positive. That's what the proposers, Republican legislators pushing this.
It may save a few bucks in administering elections too.
Yeah,
it's one of the other potential bonuses.
It would, because the city right now has to pay the full freight of those elections because it's the only thing on the ballot. If they hold an election concurrently with county, the state, and so forth, then they would be sharing that cost. So yes, it would cost less per election. The tricky thing with that is, how do you do that? How do you move to even year elections when you have people who were elected in these off year elections? So what the bill mandates is that everybody who's currently in office would have their term extended to the next even year so that they could get on that cycle with the state and federal elections. Now, city leaders have typically opposed this whole idea of moving to even year elections because they say it'll make it harder to have, good, robust discussion of city issues. And they say, yes, you do have lower turnout in those years, but you also have, for people who are paying attention, who do go out and vote, you have a lot more opportunity to really talk about city issues, give a full airing to it. And this is not just for the actual elections to council and mayor, but also like if you have a referendum, on the ballot, which they often do, that having it separate gives more opportunity for people in the community to talk about and understand these issues. And if you have it on the same ballot with the state and federal offices, it's going to be at the very bottom of the ballot. That could be a super long ballot, could be 3, 4, 5 pages. In some of these years where you have judicial elections, you have just an ungodly number of offices all on the ballot at the same time. So that's been a concern from city officials. But the way the bill is written, it would take effect immediately on passage, which would seem to mean that, for example, Mayor India Kincannon, whose second term expires next year, 2027, that would get extended. And the 4 city council members whose terms are also expiring next year. that would get extended, and the next election would be in 2028. There has been some pushback against this. Interestingly, former city council member Andrew Roberto, who's also a former member of the Knox County Election Commission, he wrote a fairly strong post about this, put it up on his personal website this week, saying that this would be a violation of sort of the compact between voters and their elected officials that, look, I elected you to 4 years, not to 5, and the state has no business just randomly giving people another year. Now, it's also worth noting that Roberto is widely discussed as a possible mayoral candidate, and you think about anybody who's been planning on maybe running in the 2027 elections, if they suddenly find out that that's not taking place to 2028, it scrambles all your plans. Yeah. So I have a little bit of news to break on this here, and we'll have more about this in Compass this coming week. There is a proposed amendment to this bill that would make it effective in 2028. So if that happens, and as you say, this is going to come up in a couple of committees this week, in the Finance, Ways and Means Committee in the House and Senate. If that happens, then the 2027 elections would take place as usual, and then after 2028, city elections would move to even years. Now, that would still mean that some people would get an extra year on their terms. We just had 5 city council members elected last fall, 2025. Their terms under the current system would expire in 2029. If this amendment goes in that moves the effective date to 2028, they would still get their terms extended to 2030. Candidates elected in 2027, who under the current system would then have those terms expire in 2031, would get an extra year to 2032. But you would avoid the issue of having a term-limited mayor who under the city charter is only allowed to serve 8 years, having that extra year added. Now, there's no way to do this that somebody doesn't get an extra year.
Right, but in the new option, at least theoretically, the populace is knowing they're voting for a 5-year cycle.
If
right,
it goes
yeah, that's what the point I was wanting to make was that kind of doesn't refute Roberto's point, but it does kind of undermine it a little bit. That voters, if they're paying attention, and we know from experience that city voters in odd numbered years do pay attention, they will know that they're voting for a 5-year term.
Right.
And so
and Roberto as a possible candidate might have less objection to the next mayor getting a 5-year term than he would to the current mayor getting a 5-year term.
Yes.
So it's all, it's interesting. And, that whole question of what it would do to the conduct of city elections and how hard it would be for those city races to get attention. Would it mean that city candidates are now going to have to raise more money to run just because they're going to be competing for voters' attention with all of these other offices? Those are all unknowns. I do think it's true that you would get more turnout. I think that part is probably indisputable.
Yeah. And I think about it from you guys probably more than me, but our perspective as, following these stories and following these campaigns and doing stuff, it would be nice to have a year off. Have a little bit of downtime from election cycle, because we joke every time we get to an election cycle. It's like, we are literally in the middle of a county race, even year, and we've already talked here and there a few times this year about some of the next year's city races.
Yeah, if you live in the city, you're kind of always in an election season.
Right, so to have a little break just for us as for the journalism and coverage side of it, just have a little break where you could be like.
The flip side, though, from the journalism coverage side of it is, if this happens, we're going to have to try to cover all the city races and all the county races and all the state legislature races all at the same time. Right. There is also, this is worth mentioning, there's another separate proposal also working its way through the legislature that would affect county elections. County elections are already in even-numbered years, but this bill would require the counties to have their elections in line with the state and federal cycles. Right now, Knox County has its primaries. Well, it varies. In presidential years, they have their primaries in March. the general election in August. In non-presidential years like this year, they have the primary in May, general election in August. But this change would require the county to have August primaries and November general elections, just like state and federal offices, which, if you think about what that would mean, I mean,
Well, okay,
we
real
would
quick.
be voting for just like
Everybody.
an astounding number of offices all in the same elections.
So with that, so one of the things on the city version of it was that the original at least said that it was going to give that option for those local municipalities to pick where in the even year they wanted to place them. Would this
That was
secondary bill also correct
well,
that?
so that was in the original version of the city bill. My understanding is that is not in the current version. The current version of the bill on city elections says that they would have to do the August primary, November general. The thing for Knoxville is that Knoxville already does that.
Right.
It has an August primary. It's later in the month, so they would move it up a few weeks, but that wouldn't be that big a move.
Right, but both pass, everything would be August, November.
Everything would be August and November. The county one is harder because that it's actually set in the state constitution
Right.
that the county general elections are in August. So it takes a constitutional amendment. So that one, if
4
it
years.
passes the legislature this year, it would then have to pass the legislature again next year by a 2/3 majority.
And then wait for a gubernatorial.
And then it would go on, I think, the 2032 the 2030
Right.
gubernatorial ballot as a statewide constitutional amendment. And if it passed, it would take effect in 2034. So that change, if it happens,
Would be
is
way
a
down the
ways
road,
out.
right.
The city change, if it happens, will either be next year or if this amendment goes through, would take place, starting in 2030, essentially. So yeah, lots of moving pieces here. What impact it all has, I don't know. But one thing that is just inevitable if they make the city change is that some number of city elected officials are going to get 5-year terms because that's the only way to align those cycles.
Bonus year.
Yeah.
And,
For good or bad. If you really like it, then you get a bonus year of the good. If you really, 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 really don't like it, you got to suffer one more year.
And of course, Jesse, you said you're going to be having something on that in our newsletter coming up this week. And it's good a time as any to remind people, they can go to CompassKnox.com and
That's
subscribe so that they can get said newsletter. And
we were the first people in town to report on all of this. And so if you are a Compass subscriber, you knew about it before anybody else.
Yeah, this one got a special release, a special bonus release.
We put out a bonus. Well, because, I pulled all this together on like a Friday. We don't publish again until Monday. It seemed significant enough to me that, maybe our mayor's going to get an extra year in office. People would maybe want to know that, especially since the bill was moving through the legislature. So anybody who wanted to weigh in, deserves some notification. So yeah, we actually sent out a special alert to our subscribers.
That's fun getting a bonus email.
Extra edition. No additional cost.
So anyway, we'll be following that this week. We got a bunch of other stuff coming up this week too. It's going to be kind of a busy week. On Monday, Justice Knox, the social justice assembly of faith-based organizations and churches will hold their annual Nehemiah Action 7 p.m. on Monday at the Civic Auditorium. That is a place where they usually gather, usually a couple thousand people there. They bring up leaders, invite leaders to attend. Generally, both mayors go, and they ask them to do things. And they're going to one of the things they're going to talk about is micro transit. The CAT is looking at a micro transit option. If you're unfamiliar with what that is where they would take smaller vans and transport people who don't live near bus stops but who want to take public transportation. They'll transport them to the bus stop. And it's not like a door-to-door thing, but it is a door-to-bus stop transportation service. They're looking at possibly implementing that The Justice Knox wants them to do that, wants them to commit to do that. They also want both mayors to continue their commitment to the Office of Housing Stability. So anyway, that's going to be at 7:00 on Monday. On Tuesday at 5:00 in the Summer Place Boardroom, Knox County Schools will hold a community budget meeting. Now, you won't get hard numbers from what I understand when they meet that, but they're going to talk about the various budget priorities and how they're planning to address those. Anybody can go. It's open to the public if you're interested in the school.
Yeah, this is kind of the setup to the board will have a special meeting later in April to adopt a proposed budget, and so This is kind of the first step toward that.
Right, and sometime between now and I believe it's the 24th, they're going to release the actual budget proposal, the actual numbers. On Tuesday at 6 p.m., City Council is meeting. The very, very light agenda. I can't use the word very often enough, but it's a very light agenda, not a whole lot on. I mean, the routine business, but things like hiring a contractor to do electrical repairs, things like that. Also, one other thing happening Tuesday. Tuesday's a busy day. There is going to be a county mayor candidate budget debate, and Lord Seth he not only rules his Barbarian Studios, he's going to be ruling that debate. Tell us about the debate, Seth.
I mean, the long and short of it is, I think we talked about it earlier. This episode, it's been touched on by a number of the debates and stuff like that. Personally, to me, it's always like, especially this year around, it's like it's budget and growth. That's all the really mayors have. That's been a lot of what has been talked about, and in my opinion, that is kind of the other than being the face of the county, that's kind of the core actual job duties of said mayor. And so I figured let's do one that we just focus on that one. Back in February, got started working on it, and I sent out a request to all the candidates that we knew of then, and then later went ahead and added Bo in when he announced, and all four have confirmed, both back in February when I officially did it, and I've touched base with all of them this week as well. Everybody's in, everybody will be there. So 8:00 at the Relics. It's 1208 North Central Street in my Happy Holler. I claim ownership of that whole neighborhood now. And our fellow studio sitter right now, Jesse, is going to be one of the moderators, as well as Allie from Knox News.
Allie Feinberg.
She's going to come out and help us with it, and we're going to put it on. I believe I'm going to be hosting the only debate in any of the debates that we've had in this cycle that will have a bar open. If you want to have a beer or a cocktail while you sit and learn things, that will be an option in place.
I will not be drinking while I'm moderating, but I do approve and applaud the option. I think it makes for a livelier civic environment.
I've grown up in the bar industry and worked in the bar industry for a long time, and always one of those first rules was no politics and drinking. And so I'm just going to go straight up and buck that rule real hard this time, and we might learn why. So, but yeah, no, like I said, we like, and I think one of the things we're doing a little differently. We have a pair, a couple of prepared questions that all the candidates already have. That will be the starting point, and we'll launch from there and kind of see where it goes. It's going to be more, hopefully a little bit more deeper on a couple of the very specific issues than really broad strokes. I want to kind of nail down a couple things. That's the goal with this debate.
All right. Well, that'll be a fun way to end Tuesday, which will be a long day for us. But anyway, then on Thursday, early voting starts in our election. So,
speaking of having elections all the time,
yes, it's already early voting time, and
this is the first of 3 early voting cycles we're going to have this year, because we've got the May primary, the August general, and the August county general state primary, and then the November, state and federal general. So
now the early voting goes on for 2 weeks, every day except Sunday. The standard hours are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Although some sites have different hours, so you'll want to go to knoxvotes.org to check the hours, or you can subscribe to our newsletter, and we will usually have those in ours.
And remember that early voting, it's whichever one's convenient to you. You're not districted to one. That's one that a lot of people like to ask. It's like, no, you can go wherever you want. Yeah, Downtown West is always the busiest because people are out there shopping or whatever. Yeah, if you live in West Knoxville but you work downtown, you can just go to the City County building. Yeah. On your lunch break. And I won't, because I don't believe in early voting like you, Scott. Jesse's going to take care of it. But
this is one of these primaries where if you're a Republican or you want to vote in the Republican primary, you'll have a number of things to vote for. You have countywide offices, mayor and sheriff and trustee and some others, as well as district races and county commission races. If you want to vote in the Democratic primary, there is only one contested Democratic primary, which is in the 1st District school board race. And other than that, you can go and fill in the bubbles for the other Democratic candidates if you want, but there are no contests. Yeah.
The sheriff's office has no Democratic challenger. That's right. Do we have any other races that the primary is the election?
The Register of Deeds has no primary or general election opposition, right? Is there a Democrat running in that? No. There's no Republican. There's no Republican challenging Sherry Witt. Sherry Witt is running to, she's been county clerk for the last 4 years. She was Register of Deeds before that. She is now running again as to retake that office. She has no opposition.
Well, now one thing that is new this year in early voting, 3 new locations. Usually there are 6 kind of standard locations that they have. You can also get those at knoxvotes.org or our website or our newsletter. But there's going to be a new location in Halls, a new one in Northwest Knoxville on Clinton Highway, and one out in Farragut. So those are in addition to the ones they already have. They have one in Gibbs, they have one in Carter, Downtown West, East Knoxville at Eternal Life Harvest Center, New Harvest Park in North Knoxville, Carnes Senior Center. So those are all places. Also Meridian Baptist Church in South Knoxville. So those are all the locations. You can, as I said, go to knoxvotes.org, and they will to find out exactly where all these are. And there's all kinds of other information about the election on that website as well. That's the Election Commission's website. So that wraps it up for this week. Want to thank Lord Seth for his intrepid work getting us recorded and out there to the world. Will Wright provided our music. Thank you, Will. And Jesse, we'll be back next week with another episode of Compass Points.
Yes, we will.
CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.